My daughter-in-law mistakenly packed my son's lunchbox in my bag that morning. I laughed at the mix-up and showed it to a coworker, expecting amusement. Instead, his face drained of color. He whispered urgently, "Get your son checked immediately." His life depends on it. Confused and terrified, I couldn't understand what he meant, until the hospital revealed a truth that shattered me. If you're hearing this, like, subscribe, and comment where my story reached you. On a bright Monday in our Washington neighborhood, the house hummed with the ordinary noises of morning: coffee brewing, a radio playing a soft ballad, footsteps padding across hardwood. I was hurriedly checking emails and squeezing into my jacket when Clara, smiling and busy, balanced two lunch containers on the counter. One small, one large, her usual thoughtful routine. She kissed Benjamin on the cheek as he left and waved to me. I tucked the smaller container into my bag and told her, "Thank you, my dear." She flashed that practiced, caring smile, and we each stepped into our day. At midday, the office felt ordinary. Printers whirring, co-workers swapping jokes, the break room smelling of reheated lunches. I reached into my bag for the little lunch Clara always packed for me, and instead found the larger container meant for Benjamin. I laughed at the familiar confusion, pried the lid, and paused. A ring of tiny white crystals dusted the rim, like sugar, like decoration, but something about it pricked the back of my neck. A few younger employees crowded around, teasing me about a frosted rim as if I had brought a cocktail to work. I carried the container to David, the colleague I trusted most. He had been a doctor long ago and now advised our company on safety. He tilted the container under the fluorescent light, frowned, and ran a fingertip along the crystals. Suddenly, his color drained. "Who prepared this?" he asked softly. When I said Clara had, his gaze sharpened. He told me, urgently and without explanation, to take Benjamin to the hospital immediately. The room fell silent. What had been a joke dissolved into a tight, cold panic. I sealed the container in a plastic bag, as if handling evidence, feeling ridiculous and terrified at once. Jones, our driver, sped through the city. Washington blurred into a smear of glass and traffic. In the antiseptic chill of the hospital waiting area, the minutes became loud. Faces from Benjamin's childhood, his shy grin at school plays, the way he once tucked my scarf around my shoulders, spooled through my mind like a film I couldn't stop. At last, a doctor named Ethan approached, his voice careful and grave. He read the lab findings aloud. Presence of arsenic. The explanation that followed sketched a terrible pattern. Chronic exposure, symptoms that began with fatigue and stomach pain and progressed stealthily. I felt each remembered complaint from Benjamin click into place, like the pieces of a nightmare puzzle. How many nights had I blamed deadlines and stress for his pallor? How many times had he smiled and said, "I'll be fine, Mom"? The world contracted. I called Benjamin and left a trembling message, but he did not answer. My hands shook as I gripped the results. I thought of Clara leaning over the stove, humming while she stirred. The image became a cold, uncanny thing. I could not imagine betrayal, yet the evidence hummed at the edges of reason. I drove home in a fog, clutching the plastic bag as if it were the last link to a truth I both feared and needed to face. At home, the facade of normalcy hung thin. Clara moved about the kitchen with the same practiced ease, setting flowers, humming as if nothing had shifted. I watched her through a lens of guarded calm. My first stop was the office of Harrison, our lawyer. The will, its clauses, lay open between us like a map pointing to motive. If Benjamin died before me, Clara would step into a role that made her inherit everything. The facts lined up with a clarity that made my blood run cold. Harrison explained legal pathways and contingency clauses, but what gripped me was the possibility that someone I loved might have felt cornered enough to choose harm. We began to weave a careful strategy. I spoke loudly in the house about changing the will, about donating most of my assets to charity, making sure the words reached ears that might be listening. At dinner, I watched Clara's mannerisms. Small tremors beneath her smile. Fingers lingered on glasses a fraction too long. Inspector Carter, an acquaintance with a steady gaze and old instincts, arranged for a camera to be concealed in the pantry. We needed more than suspicion. We needed proof. The footage, when viewed later in a dim room, made the world tilt. Clara moved with the quiet precision of someone who had rehearsed her gestures 100 times, opening a small vial, measuring a sprinkle, dropping it into a pot as she stirred. It was mechanical and calm and utterly chilling. Seeing her there, captured in mundane motion, the person who arranged bouquets and waited on our whims, I felt a grief that was its own kind of betrayal. The police proposed a sting to force a break in her composure. Benjamin would pretend to be overwhelmed by illness after a meal. We would stage a tragic collapse so Clara's unfiltered reaction could be observed. The idea of my son playing at death to shield his life tore at me, but every other option risked leaving him vulnerable. Benjamin agreed with courage that made me proud and hollow at once. We rehearsed the smallest cues, the timing of a call, the ambulance's arrival. The charade would be our snare. The night arrived like a held breath. Clara plated soup with the loving gestures she had always used, kissing her husband's brow as she set the bowl down. Benjamin, pale and steady in his acting, ate a spoonful, then clutched his stomach convincingly and crumpled. I screamed for help, voice shaking as an actor and a mother at once. Undercover officers played paramedics. The hospital prepared its staged room, and I texted Clara that my son had not made it. When she rushed in, disheveled and desperate, her sobs sounded real, on the surface, yet a whispered phrase slipped free, a soft, "Finally, it's over," captured cleanly by the hidden mic. The sound landed like proof. At once, Benjamin sprang up, eyes blazing, and Inspector Carter stepped forward, holding the video, the lab report, the recorded conversations. The net closed. Clara's composure shattered. Her explanations dissolved into confessions of panic, greed, and fear. She cried that she had been desperate, that her plan had snowballed in terror and haste. Watching the officers lead her away, I felt a complicated relief threaded with sorrow. Betrayal had bruised us, but the truth had been pried into daylight. Benjamin came to my side, his face hollow but alive. We had set a trap to save his life, and in its aftermath, we found a quiet determination to rebuild. The courtroom later echoed with the weight of choices and quiet relief. Finally resolved now. When the officers led Clara away, the hospital corridor seemed to exhale. The weight of fear lifted, but what remained was raw exhaustion. I wrapped my arms around Benjamin and pressed my cheek to his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart, the same rhythm I had prayed I'd never lose. People hurried past us, nurses carrying charts, orderlies pushing gurneys, but in that moment, the world was only him and me. We were guided to an observation room beside the interrogation chamber, a cold space with a two-way mirror. Benjamin's hand trembled in mine as he stared through the glass at Clara, cuffed and disheveled under the harsh fluorescent light. His silence spoke volumes, a silence filled with memories of love and betrayal colliding all at once. I whispered, "Son, the truth will stand today," though part of me said it just to steady my own breaking heart. Inspector Carter entered the room where Clara sat. His voice was patient but sharp, asking her to explain. She deflected at first, insisting she had done nothing wrong, her voice wavering with rehearsed conviction. But the evidence was relentless. The small vial recovered from our kitchen was set on the table. The lab report was read aloud. Arsenic in high concentration, enough to end a life swiftly. Clara's composure cracked. She laughed nervously, claiming she only meant to help Benjamin's health with vitamins. Yet even she seemed to hear how hollow those words sounded. Then came the video from our hidden camera. Clara's careful movements appeared on the screen. The twist of a vial, the sprinkle of powder, the casual stir. Benjamin's head dropped into his hands beside me. His shoulders shook with grief. I placed my palm on his back, absorbing his sorrow, knowing no words could erase the wound. When Carter presented the copy of my will, pointing to the clause that would leave Clara as sole heir if Benjamin died, the last mask fell. Clara lashed out in anger, blaming me for planning a donation to charity. Her words cut deep, but they also revealed her truth. Greed had driven her to the edge. Benjamin stood abruptly, his voice breaking, but I clung to him, whispering, "Let justice speak, my son." The confession spilled at last. Clara admitted her plan, how she began with small doses, how fear of losing everything pushed her to accelerate. She spoke of money as if it were oxygen, as if without it she could not survive. I watched through tears, not of pity, but of grief for the daughter-in-law I once embraced as my own. When the officers escorted her out, Benjamin and I remained, gazing at the empty chair. The nightmare had ended, but the scars were carved into us forever. Later, as the sun dipped behind the Washington skyline, Benjamin took my hand. His voice was steady, filled with gratitude. "Mom, we survived because of you." I squeezed his hand back, silently vowing that no betrayal, no greed would ever destroy us again. This story is fictional, though inspired by real tragedies faced by families in silence. I share it not to condemn, but to awaken reflection. Tell me, if you were in my place, would you have the courage to fight back, or would fear silence your voice? Share your thoughts in the comments. And before you go, I invite you to stay with our channel. On the screen now, you'll find 2 more stories that will grip your heart and remind you of the strength hidden in love and truth.